All right, we're actually doing this. Hello there to anyone out there who happens to be watching this. Just trying something a little new for me, something a little out of my element. I'm sure none of y'all know who I am. But I've always sort of admired Let's Plays from a lot of other YouTubers, particularly those from some years back. Chugga Conroy, NCS, and I've always sort of admired that style of video making. Just showing off something you like and commentating while doing so. This is done in a sort of after the fact fashion where I'm commentating over the gameplay, which I know is also a style of doing Let's Plays, so it's just more convenient for me to be doing that kind of thing right now. But anyway, that aside, thought I'd give it a try. And in order to sort of give off a good start for doing this kind of thing, I figured I'd go with a game that I know fairly well, that I can play without issue, and that I know like the back of my hand, and that is Battle for Bikini Bottom. Uh, Probably the most popular, probably agreed to be the best game that came from the Spongebob franchise. Um, I'm sure a lot of y'all coming towards this video are familiar with it, especially with the recent news of it getting a remake soon, which is interesting to me because it's something that I've thought about particularly for a while, and it's pretty cool that this one game that was sort of a fan favorite of kids, especially those growing up in the 2000s, is now warranting a remake. And I've already pre-ordered mine. Got that ready to go. But that's why I figured I'd do something that was personally close to me. And it's kind of funny looking back at these cutscenes, seeing how well they're animated, and showing off the graphics of the time. Uh, yeah, so I'm gonna try to not keep try to not have the commentary be stale. I'm doing this mostly improvised, not scripted or anything. I've got a few notes written here just about topics I want to go over, and hopefully this goes well. So about the game itself. So for any of y'all who haven't played this, it's essentially, in a very rough way of explaining it, Super Mario 64, for lack of a better word or phrase, title. But with SpongeBob characters and other things in it, where it's a simple sort of platformer adventure game. You progress through the different levels, collecting different collectibles. What this game's equivalent to the Mario stars would be their golden spatulas, and instead of coins, collecting shiny objects. And I just remember this being a really big game to me when I was a child. So, it's kind of fun to be, now playing it and commentating over it in this sort of style. Uh, Again, it's just I feel like a lot of people kind of grew up with this game, and I never really saw a lot of people sort of giving it a lot of respect. I know there are other Let's Players out there, people who've kind of tried to cover it. I know Game Grumps did a video, and there's some other ones floating around there, but for the most part, it's kind of just been treated as a sort of obscure title that, not a lot of people really talked about, and those who did know it and did like it from, childhood, just, I don't know, kind of didn't really talk about it much. Uh, And that's one other big reason why I think it getting a remake now is a pretty big deal, because this one obscure game that that not a lot of people talked about, warranting something like that is it's a fairly big deal. And I know nowadays it's the speedrunning community that really sort of gave it new life breathed into it, and I really appreciate that community for what they're doing and how they were able to, just sort of bring back this franchise, because it's still a fun game, even after playing it for so many years. Still laughing at some of the jokes, still enjoying all the levels and segments, and to this day, new things are being found all about it. So yeah, um, I remember actually not even watching many of these cutscenes when I was younger. I'd normally just skip through them to get to the gameplay. That's pretty much how your Bikini Bottom stinks. Yeah, that still makes me laugh. Um, but yeah, a lot of the little details in this game are kind of showing just how sort of, you could tell that the people making it were fans of this show. A lot of the writing does feel like it could be something straight out of the show. The animation, maybe not necessarily there, more just a sign of the time, but definitely a lot of the dialogue and the jokes feel like they could have been straight out of an episode. And I love most of the models in the game. Some of them are a little off, particularly Mr. Krabs' model that you'll get to see later on in the gameplay. But SpongeBob's model and Sandy's and Patrick's, I think, look pretty much spot on to the show. So yeah, here we are in the first level. I'm now just inside SpongeBob's house, just having to go around, sort of do a little tutorial thing here. And so much for fixing this quietly. Yeah, I like a lot of the little references and jokes and cameos that the game sort of portrays, and you'll definitely get to see a lot more of those details as the game progresses. So yeah, I'll try not to talk over some of this dialogue here. Realize I did talk over some of those cutscenes though. We'll see, which one, talking over the cutscenes or just letting them play, either or. We'll see which ones you guys kind of think are better. But yeah, so one interesting thing is, as you just saw, is that you can actually sort of get little snippets of things that are later to come in the game by hitting the TVs. You'll get little graphics, and if you hit it just the right way, you'll get that little graphic there of Robot Patrick, which is one of the bosses for those who have played the game. It's one of the bosses that you have to defeat later on, but also Mr. Krabs' voice not being exactly how he sounds in the show. I'm not actually sure who's doing the voice for him in the game, but it's definitely not Clancy Brown. So yeah, these are shiny objects, which are this game's currency, as I probably mentioned before. In my ramblings, but these are what you're going to use to progress. Unlock different little parts of levels later on in the game, and it's pretty straightforward. Not really much to explain there. But this whole little tutorial level in SpongeBob's house, which I thought was interesting too. And one of my personal favorite things about the game is how it sort of puts everything into this 3D environment. Because as a kid, when you're watching the show, you don't really, you kind of start to picture what the whole environment of the show would look like if it were a fully fleshed out 3D environment. And that's one thing that I really like this game does. It sort of gives you a visualization of what exactly this whole world would look like if it were put into a quote-unquote realistic 3D scale, and I think the developers of the game did a great job of that. So see, this is SpongeBob's basic moveset in the game. You can do a Bubble Bash, and which is actually one of the moves that I remember you being able to unlock kind of later on in the game in the movie game, which I know a lot of people talk about being similar to Battle for Bikini Bottom. That was one I actually played a lot more when I was younger. I remember having the GameCube version of that. I'm playing on the PS2 BFBB here right now, though. But yeah, it actually is kind of interesting just how similar the movesets are, since that game was essentially, to my understanding, just the skeleton of this game with some extra stuff added. But looking back, I've always kind of considered BFBB to be a better game, but I really do have a fun time playing the movie game whenever I get a chance to. And one other thing I remember that game having was the upgrade system, where you could actually take some of the moves, which were pretty much your basic moveset here, but being able to add different sort of attributes, I guess, for lack of a better word. on top of them.
There's nothing like
But I won't get too much into that now. That's more stuff you'll see later on in the game. But here we have the hub world, actually, Bikini Bottom, which makes perfect sense. And here's Plankton, which I always thought was a funny-looking model. How he always has his hands up there, or his stubs, or his nubs, or whatever you want to call them, just up there in the air or in the water.
Where did they come from?
Where? I don't know. Not for me, though, that's for sure. They just showed up out of nowhere and started calling me rude names and throwing things. They even bent all my spoons. I love those spoons like they were my children.
That's terrible.
Oh, won't you help me stop them? Before they bend all my forks?
Not the forks! Of course I'll help. But wait, I'm supposed to collect a whole lot of golden spatulas.
Golden spatulas, eh? SpongeBob, if you could get me back into the chum bucket, I'll give you a bucket full of golden spatulas. In your dreams.
You've got a deal.
That's another funny little detail about the game is when the different animations that play when you hit some of the NPCs, like Plankton just sort of falling over there. And I remember Mr. Krabs having a pretty funny animation. I think his eyes sort of convulse or whatever the actual word is. Here's one of the main collectibles in the game, are these socks here. What I always thought of them as, another personal favorite childhood game was Super Mario Sunshine. And I always thought of them as pretty much the same thing as like the blue coins that you would collect in that game and then trade into a Tanuki for another Shine Sprite, which was that game's equivalent to the Power Stars. And these are scattered all over the different levels. Some of them are hidden a little better than others. Some of them actually took me years to find. I just couldn't decipher how to find some of them when I was a kid. So yeah, I ended up cheating a few years later, looking up tutorials where to find them just so I can get a 100% file, But that's just how it was. But yeah, here's Squidward, who, if I'm correct, is actually going to be playable in Rehydrated, which I'm personally interested in. I'm really curious to see what exactly they're going to have him do. But yeah, this is actually one of my, in my opinion, one of the funnier missions in the game, just because of the title on the menu. It's denoted as Annoy Squidward, which it's kind of stupid, but I always thought that was kind of a funny way to call it. But yeah. So basically, this mission just involves you jumping around like an idiot, just like Squidward says. And he gets so annoyed, he gives you a golden spatula. It's pretty straightforward. But
I knew that you could help me out.
Another one of the secret socks I remember in this game coming up soon. Yeah, it just involves you destroying everything and finding a sock. Pretty straightforward. Nothing much to say there. Oh man. But yeah, so in an effort to not have this commentary be too dry, I understand if it's a little bit of a chore to hear me. Again, pretty new to this sort of thing, but hopefully these videos will turn out all right. But yeah, so I'll try to bring up different topics, different things to sort of talk about later on in these videos, sort of keep it fresh, so I won't drone on so much. But here we're just getting one of the other early spatulas in the game on top of the pineapple. Another funny little detail I remember from the game was using the underwear as health in the game, but you would collect these golden underwears that would give you a little extra spot of health, which I thought was kind of funny because going back to that upgrade system that I remember from the movie game, you would use the upgrades to get more health. But anyway, that said, we're closing in on this episode here, just sort of showing off the first little part of Bikini Bottom. So in the next episode, we're going to be taking on the first world of the game. See ya.